From the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador, I am Estefania Bravo, and this is From the South. Candidates for Sunday's presidential election in Brazil will face off their last televised debate late on Thursday. The Workers' Party candidate Fernando Haddad has said an underhand campaign by the media is largely responsible for the advance in the polls of the far-right candidate Jair Bolsonaro. He said abusive messages were being spread on social media and then published as fake news. The latest poll by Govt on Wednesday showed Haddad creeping up to 23% behind Bolsonaro's 32%.
We're going to keep our positive approach, but now the time has also come to defend ourselves in this final stretch, because it's very serious what's happening on WhatsApp. We estimate that millions of messages were sent with very offensive content on one platform or another, and some of the messages have been picked up and published as fake news by certain media.
Earlier, we spoke with sociologist and activist Sabrina Fernandez. She says much of the support for far-right candidate Jair Bolsonaro has come from the people's disappointment with the system.
Part of the Jair Bolsonaro social base is empowered. Of course, we can't mistake his social base by his electorate. A lot of people who are voting for Jair Bolsonaro are actually people who would have voted for Lula otherwise. There are people who are really disappointed with the economic crisis in Brazil, the way the coup happened in Brazil, the Temer government has been handling things. So they are disappointed and they think that Bolsonaro stands for change.
Our correspondent Ignacio Lemus tells us more.
Brazil is in the final stretch of its electoral campaign for the election that will take place this Sunday. Presidential candidates will participate in a televised debate, expected to have a great audience as it's broadcasted in one of the biggest networks in the country. 7 candidates will attend this debate, although the main absence will be Jair Bolsonaro, the far-right candidate and front-runner. Doctors have recommended him to rest. Other candidates have criticized this absence, like Ciro Gomes from the PDT, who says that Bolsonaro's absence is not justified. Some say that as Bolsonaro is not debating, the rest of the candidates have Haddad as the main target. So far, all polls say Brazil will go to a second runoff between Fernando Haddad and Jair Bolsonaro. Meanwhile, the Workers' Party filed a claim against fake news spreading in social media. The Workers' Party has created a WhatsApp account for people to report on these fake news. It has already received over 5,000 reports.
We thank Nacho Lemos for that report. Social movements in Uruguay have created a committee to support democracy in Brazil and the release of former President Lula da Silva. Activists, political figures, and intellectuals attended an event to launch the committee. This body will also try to raise awareness about the threats from neoliberal policies to the peoples of Latin America and the rights they have won. The Venezuelan government is seeking to negotiate set prices for a number of products and services as part of its attempts to stabilize the economy. These include private schools and pharmacies, but the old problem of speculation persists.
The shutters are down, not because of shortage, but as a sign that there is no meat on the shelves.
They are nuts. They want to kill us Venezuelans. If I'm agreeing the prices, then I assume everything has been checked, how much the profit and loss is. And they have to sell it like that? But they put the prices at 90, and you can't find it anywhere, not even half a kilo of meat.
Beef is one of the 50 products whose price was agreed between the government and the private sector. But pork, if you can find it, like other animal proteins, doesn't have a controlled price.
What can you do? No one knows why it's going up. They supposedly agreed on prices like butter, and it turns out that butter arrives next week at 240, and the agreed price was 65.
So who is putting it up?
It's the Polar Company, because they are the ones who are selling it. The wholesalers do what they want. It is anarchy. They don't care about anyone else. There's a lot of speculation, so to avoid problems, it's easier just not to sell it.
On this corner, they sell eggs. Apparently, they don't have any, but they do. Only they sell them secretly at non-agreed prices. You are not going to sell eggs?
Tomorrow at 6 a.m., because eggs sells fast, because people buy eggs quickly, I sold them before, when they were in control. The problem is the price control, because if they were free of the price, then the eggs reappear. Just like chicken and meat, because all of that has disappeared.
It seems that the businessmen's commitment with the government are not being kept. For other economists, speculation is the main issue.
Price agreements are a valid tool. If you look at Argentina, Macri's government eliminated the price agreements of the previous government, and now inflation has increased. So there's a call to reintroduce price agreements. I think that these agreements are a valid tool. The conditions are there for them to be implemented, and if they don't comply, it is for purely speculative reasons.
The private school sector has also signed an agreement with the government to control enrollment fees.
This is to ensure agreed prices for school tuition, to ensure the right to education for the sake of our children.
The government's efforts continue. Now it is time to listen to the pharmaceutical sector, whose production costs are being evaluated.
We'll be back very soon. Stay with us. Welcome back. October 5th marks 30 years since Chileans voted against keeping dictator Augusto Pinochet in power. The plebiscite allowed to put a peaceful end to the brutal regime. The TV campaign for the no option is still recognized for playing a key role in the result. It promoted democracy and happiness through music, dances, and humor. The plebiscite opened the door to hold presidential elections a year later.
We've never had the absolute certainty that the campaign was going to go on the air. There was always a fear, a concern that they would change the rules of the game, that the government would decide not to broadcast the campaign or any other event that would have prevented it from going out. The fact that it was on the television screen was already an impressive achievement.
Victims of Guatemala's dictatorship are still awaiting justice. Human rights defenders say the judiciary could be complicit because the trials have been delayed for decades.
The case involving the massacre that took place 36 years ago is currently before the judiciary. The victims' relatives have encountered countless obstacles on the road to justice, including suspicions of judicial corruption in favor of the perpetrators.
Key figures in the case have also died since so much time has passed since the massacre. Those persons were to be witnesses who would have presented essential evidence. Several high-ranking officials accused of the massacres have also died. The judiciary is somehow complicit since it's delaying the trial and the justice that victims' relatives have been so desperately seeking.
But in a separate genocide case, Guatemala's top court overturned the genocide conviction of former dictator Efrain Rios Montt, ordering that a new trial be held in 5 years' time.
There are many people who evaded justice. General Luis Enriquez Mendoza Garcia is one of them. He has never been made to pay for crimes committed during the dictatorship. We are hoping he will be detained and brought to court soon for those atrocities.
Relatives of those who are either missing or were killed say they will wait for justice to be served. They say their hope is stronger than the drawn-out legal process they've been made to face.
We understand the work of judges can be complicated, but they should consider the thousands of people waiting for justice to be served. These cases should be a priority.
The public ministry says there are close to 4,000 registered unsolved reports of disappearances, murders, and other similar crimes which occurred during Guatemala's dictatorship. All of them took place more than 36 years ago.
And meanwhile, the United Nations has denied reaching any agreement with Guatemala to appoint a new chief for the country's anti-corruption mission. A spokesperson from the UN says Ivan Velázquez will continue as the Commissioner for the International Commission Against Impunity. The international body is currently considering the possibility of appointing a deputy commissioner. President Jimmy Morales had previously said that he agreed with UN Secretary General Antonio Gutierrez to appoint a new mission chief. Mexico's President-elect Andrés Manuel López Obrador has spoken by phone with U.S. President Donald Trump about the new trade deal to replace NAFTA. López Obrador said they talked about using the agreement to boost investment in Mexico and Central America. They agreed that economic development in the region could help to reduce migration towards the U.S. On Sunday, the U.S., Canada, and Mexico agreed a new trade deal, now known as the USMCA.
We talk about the importance of the initial signing of this agreement, which in our case gives us economic certainty, allows for confidence in investment in the medium and long term. So it was a good agreement. That's what we talk about, and we also talk about a next step, that we can agree on joint investment.
Peru's former president Alberto Fujimori has been taken to a local hospital. This after the Supreme Court overturned his pardon and ordered his arrest. He will be returned to prison where he was serving a 25-year sentence for human rights abuses. The court found grounds to uphold a civil appeal against the pardon granted last December by then-President Pedro Pablo Kuczynski. Fujimori's pardon and release led to widespread protests, and Kuczynski was forced to resign 2 months later. Fujimori supporters have clashed with police officials outside the former president's residence. They reportedly shouted at and pushed officers who arrived to execute a search of the house. Meanwhile, Fujimori's daughter Keiko says she will appeal the court's decision. She believes her father has the right to be pardoned.
Today is one of the saddest days of our lives. It is extremely painful to know a judge from our country has taken away my father's freedom, saying that because he's not dying, he has no right to a humanitarian pardon.
And the relatives of those killed during the term of Alberto Fujimori says justice has finally been served. They say they feel at peace with the judge's order to once again detain the former president.
We have always been respectful of the judiciary and the decisions of its members. We have also respected the Inter-American Court of Human Rights and its resolutions. Today, the resolution made by Judge Núñez Julca regarding Alberto Fujimori has given us peace knowing we were heard. We feel the judiciary respected us and understood the need to serve justice to the victims by ordering the arrests of one of the responsibles for the disappearance and death of our relatives.
The order for Fujimori's arrest came just before the deadline for Congress to approve 4 anti-corruption reforms. Early on Thursday, lawmakers voted in favor of the reforms demanded by President Martín Vizcarra. They will now be submitted to a national referendum on December 9th. Last month, President Vizcarra threatened to shut down Congress if it didn't approve the reform to the judicial system and other institutions. Our correspondent in Lima, Jaime Herrera, tells us more.
The reforms passed by Congress are expected to be issued to the government to be enforced on Friday. Then, an electoral schedule should be displayed and it should end on December 8th, with a popular consultation. People will also elect their governors on the same day. This schedule was one of the conditions asked by the government to confirm that Congress has given its confidence to Martín Vizcarra's government, so the president does not dismantle Congress. However, progressive forces have put some conditions. We are talking about those 24 votes aimed at reporting what they call vagueness in some of these proposals, related to the election of and on the limits for fundings of electoral campaigns and how to monitor them. So they say these 4 proposals are not enough to fight the situation of crisis and corruption in the country. They believe it is required to go further and call for a constituent assembly to change the whole system.
That was Jaime Herrera reporting from Lima, Peru. More stories now. Women in Bolivia are developing a plan to fight sexism and promote greater equality.
More than a dozen women organizations are organizing regional referendums to consolidate a national alliance with different sectors.
Women have to remain together more than ever. We want to consolidate a national alliance.
We want to reach unity to support a process of change. Social organizations and women have to accompany change in the country. We will support our president, Evo Morales.
Women organizations are building a program with 7 main topics to then socialize it with the government. They will ask for a bigger political participation and a fight against sexism.
It is very important to recognize the knowledge of women. They are the ones who guarantee, for example, food security.
There is still a lot of discriminations towards women. They are not allowed to work in some cases or occupy management posts.
Women have to be appointed for 50% of official posts. They are demanding this to be a reality.
Women occupy 51% of seats in the Senate. We are still missing women in mayor's offices. From 339 municipalities, only 35 women are mayors. By 2020, we need at least 150 women as mayors.
In previous governments, women couldn't own lands. The state is also promoting free housing for women.
Members of the Ecuadorian Organization of Missing People went before the International Court of Justice to expose what they say is the state's inaction on cases involving their loved ones. Our correspondent, Denise Herrera, has more.
Maribel was born in a city on the Ecuadorian coast. She moved to the capital, Quito, in search of a better life. Unfortunately, she is now grappling with the loss of her son. He simply disappeared from a public hospital years ago. Sadly, hers is an all too familiar history.
From that moment, my life changed completely. I called my mother. I called out to my son. We stepped out of the hospital, and then when we went back in, nothing. We never saw him again. We never found him. It's been 7 years and 6 months, and I still don't know where my son is. We went to all the authorities, but no one could help find him. No one has seen him. Although we made several reports, we turned up empty-handed.
We are one of several families living this nightmare. Each day we suffer not knowing where our loved ones are. They could be anywhere out there in Ecuador. But the authorities have failed to respond to our plight, and this is unacceptable.
In light of this, relatives of missing persons have formed an organization in a bid to get answers, locate their loved ones, and to demand urgent action from the authorities. The group now has the support of the Ombudsman's office. They have taken their plight to no less than the international courts.
In Ecuador, there is no clear process to find a missing person, and this is a violation of the obligation to establish clear and effective resources.
The Organization of Missing People has also met with analysts, legal experts, and other authorities. Some legal experts say Ecuador must fulfill its responsibility as a state after this international hearing.
The Ecuadorian state has a legal and moral obligation. Firstly, the state must take urgent action in these missing persons cases. Prompt investigations must also be carried out, and missing persons' relatives must be consistently informed and updated, as they have a right to know the truth. Secondly, who is responsible? Justice must be served. And finally, in adverse cases, reparations must be paid by the Ecuadorian state.
According to the Ecuadorian government, around 40,000 people were registered as missing, and that so far for this year alone. Ecuadorian authorities were supposed to provide a missing person update at the recent media conference, but they failed to do so. They left without providing any details, much to relatives' dismay. Denise Herrera, Telesur, Ecuador.
Thursday marks the 9th anniversary of the death of Argentinian singer Mercedes Sosa. During her 60 years of career, Sosa made folklore popular in Latin America and the whole world. She lived 8 years in exile as she was persecuted by the dictatorship for her lyrics and her commitment with social causes. Known as the voice of Latin America, Sosa reached people from all over the planet.
Después de un año bajo la tierra, igual que sobreviviente que vuelve de la guerra. Tantas veces me borraron, tantas desaparecieron.
We'll be back very soon. Stay with us. Protesters have gathered in front of the U.S. Supreme Court to protest against nominee Judge Brett Kavanaugh. Thousands marched in Washington, D.C. to urge the Senate to vote against Kavanaugh's confirmation. Several women have accused him of sexual misconduct. On Wednesday morning, senators viewed an FBI report on the accusations. Protesters also urge authorities to believe women. U.S. Vice President Mike Pence has accused China of undermining President Donald Trump ahead of the coming legislative election. Pence alleged that China was waging a sophisticated influence campaign against the Republican Party in retaliation for Trump's trade policies against Beijing, but the allegations rose questions that this is just a way to deflect attention from investigations on a possible meddling of Russia in the 2016 presidential election. His statements marked a sharp approach towards China.
As we speak, Beijing is employing a whole-of-government approach to advance its influence and benefit its interests. It's employing this power in more proactive and coercive ways to interfere in the domestic policies of this country and to interfere in the politics of the United States.
Pence has also accused China of helping Venezuela through credit lines in exchange of oil. He said China has promised the Latin American country $5,000 million that can be paid with oil. He also condemned Panama, El Salvador, and the Dominican Republic for cutting ties with Taiwan. Thousands have staged a sit-down outside Ireland's parliament against housing shortages. The lack of housing has become the main issue in the country ahead of a possible election in the coming months. Demonstrators say housing shortages sparked a hike in rental costs and also homelessness. A farmer from Burkina Faso has won the Alternative Nobel Prize for promoting an Asian farming technique to reverse desertification. Yakuba Sawadogo is among the winners of the Right Livelihood Awards. The prize recognized his work to transform thousands of sterile hectares in the Sahel into lush forest. The farmer says he wants the upcoming generations to enjoy green nature and the benefits of a good environment. Syria's recovered antiquities have been unveiled in Damascus Opera. Golden coins, bronze statues, and amphoras are among these 500 artifacts on show. Two rare busts were rescued from the ancient city of Palmyra and restored after being damaged by the Islamic State. Dozens of Syria's archaeological sites have been destroyed during the civil war. And with that story, we've come to the end of this news brief. These and other stories, as always, find them on our website at telesurtv.net/English. And also join us on social media, on Facebook, on Twitter, and on Instagram. For Telesur English, I am Estefania Bravo. Thank you for watching.